In this video, we are doing a taste comparison of 2 consecutive harvests of our traditional Dong Ding Oolong tea. We're here tasting 2 consecutive harvests of our traditional Dong Ding Oolong tea from the same source, same tea maker. Dong Ding is probably the most famous traditional Taiwan tea that exists still. And about a year and a half ago, we finally started being able to offer the traditional version of Dong Ding Oolong tea. Basically, what that means is that it's more oxidized and it's left unroasted. Roasted Dong Ding Oolong tea is a modern incarnation, been decades now, but basically at least 30 years ago, Dong Ding started to be known as a roasted oolong. Prior to that, the tea makers themselves would not roast their teas. They would sell it to merchants, and merchants would end up roasting their leftover seasonal batches, and then eventually it became common to offer the new fresh seasonal batch or the previous seasons of roasted Dong Ding Oolong. So Dong Ding is a place name in Lugu Township, Nantou County, Taiwan. It's the name of a mountain. It designates 3 villages, basically. The village on Dong Ding Mountain called Zhangyachun, and 2 adjacent villages, Fenghuang, which means Phoenix, and Yonglong, eternal peace. We have been sourcing this tea for since, I think, winter 2020. On my left, I brewed winter 2021 batch, and on my right, the recently harvested spring 2022 batch. They are actually from 2 different family-owned plots of tea, and the winter batch was their original Qing Xin Oolong plot of tea right behind their house, and the spring batch is a newer plot of tea, and the strain is Tai Cha number 20, Ying Xiang. The common distinction that is made between the 2 is that Qing Xin Oolong has a particular lingering and full-bodied aftertaste, or ho yun, this kind of sensation in your throat that really just gives oolong its character. It's a very lasting, lingering finish, basically. We find the number 20 to be the closest to Qing Xin Oolong of all the hybrid strains. It is actually bred, one of the, whether it's the male or female part of the plant, I can't remember, one of it is Qing Xin Oolong. The reason that Tai Cha number 20 was decided to be put on the market for farmers to use is for its particular fragrant character. Hence the name, welcoming fragrance, Ying Xiang. Okay, so of course, when you do consecutive seasonal comparisons, this tea was harvested in November 2021 and has been packaged but has sat for several months now. This tea was harvested a couple of weeks ago, or less actually, so it's very fresh. But let's see what we got. So the qualifier of traditionally made Dong Ding is that it's more oxidized and left unroasted, as I said. What is more oxidized? Basically, it's just more manipulation of the leaves. The solar withering, the initial step, is more extensive, and then the indoor withering is also more extensive. And equally important is the amount of, the extent to which the leaves are shuffled and tumbled. So they basically become more supple and get pushed into the chemical reaction phase where oxidation happens. And by the time these leaves go toward their kill green stage, when they are exposed to high heat in the tumble heaters, they are very wilted and they're actually emanating heat. So there's a lot of activity within the leaves, molecular transitional activity, in the sense that it's basically the very initial stage of decomposing the leaves. But they're really just going through a lot of changes, and that is the skill in just nailing it in terms of maintaining enough freshness, but also having a certain ripeness in the quality of the brewed tea. Both of them are fruity and herbal. I think, I'm pretty sure that the spring tea is a little more oxidized, and that's typical. It's easier to oxidize spring tea. The leaves are usually more supple and they have more water, moisture content in them. Winter tea is on the tree, typically, are on the tree for a longer time. It tends to be more fibrous, a little less moisture content, and a little bit more difficult to push that the uniformity and the kind of depth of oxidation that you can get with spring tea. The coloration of the brewed teas is very similar, but especially with the second brew, the spring tea is darker than the winter tea. So with the dried leaves themselves, a little bit larger nuggets of winter leaf compared to spring leaf. The spring leaf is a little darker, more uniform in color. Basically, we had a really good spring growing season. It remained cool. The leaves actually grew more slowly than usual in spring. And at this elevation, that is definitely an asset. This is mid-elevation, about 700 meters. Actually, the Qing Xin Oolong, their home is about 700 meters. This is maybe 550 meters. It's just down the hill from their home, designated as Happy Farm. And they have chickens and ducks on the farm, fruit trees. It's really my friend's little playground. And the other difference between the two plots of tea, in addition to the cultivars, is that the Qing Xin Oolong is their original plot. It's probably 25 or 30 years old now. And the Ying Xiang Taiwan number 20 is only about 7 years old now. So this is coming into its prime, or has come into its prime. The trees are young and strong, so they have significantly more life energy to them. We've been really consistently, surprisingly satisfied with the produce from this plot of Ying Xiang Oolong. Ying Xiang is also the Taiwan Tea Research and Extension Station. They designed it and they recommend it for mid-elevation. It can handle dry growing conditions as well as hot. So it just does better at mid-elevation than Qing Xin in terms of the health of the plants themselves. Nevertheless, Qing Xin is what it is. It's the classic oolong. Okay, one more. It's so satisfying. It's like an orange creamsicle. It's sweet, creamy, fruity. It's really yummy. This is more heady, a little more ripeness, definitely fruity. Just an amazing fruity profile. If you're into that oolong for its fruitiness without the roasted smoky factor, you should check this tea out faux show. Okay, let's check it out. Winter. So I brewed 6 grams of tea leaves in 150 milliliter tea judging cups for 2 minutes each. So I did first brew and then second brew. Personally, this is currently one of my favorite teas, and I find myself continually intrigued by its subtle yet substantial character. It's not loud in its flavor notes. They're full and they're complex, but they're not like bold necessarily. So I find that there's some sense of maturity about that. I guess I feel like it's a type of tea that you will not tire of easily at all. It's also a wonderful midway between fresh and cured. Since it's not roasted, it doesn't have any of that smoky, fire roasted character, but it does have a mellowed, there's not green grassy at all in these teas. It's definitely a fruity, maybe floral. And sometimes I feel like I get a little bit of herbal in the aroma coming off the brewed leaves. The other aspect, one of the wise assets of a traditionally made tea is that it stores well. That's how they arrived at this recipe. What makes a traditional oolong is that kind of wisdom that this tea will remain fresh in its own right for months on end, or even then slowly age and become a different but also pleasurable and satisfying brew. It's fresher, it's a little more herbal and fruity. This is like sweet and creamy, the winter one. I think there's a pronounced aromatic or high note. It's just there's more complexity in the number 20. Qing Xin has its roots, very satisfying, deep flavor. This has a little more bold, fragrant qualities to it. Of course, it's very fresh compared to something that has mellowed for months. But in my experience, I'm really still getting to know the number 20. We've been buying it and tasting it for several years now, made into various incarnations, so to speak, of oolong and black tea. But they nailed it in the name for it. The fact that they call it welcoming fragrance or alluring fragrance. It's the prominent personality factor is its aromatic profile. So there we have it. One of our favorite selections, Traditional Dong Ding Oolong tea, representing the local tradition in Lugu, Taiwan. This is made by our friend who is heir to a multi-generational tea making family in the heart of Dong Ding Oolong tea country. He has been a professional tea judge at the Lugu Farmers Association for over 20 years. We feel very privileged and also honored to represent his produce. Check it out, Traditional Dong Ding Oolong. Spring 2022 is now on the shelf.